How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. We're studying Daf Kufay, Daf 105 of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, well, today we start the 13th and final parak of Masechta Ksubis. I'm doing my little standing trick again. It's pretty cool. It makes it so much easier, man. Just move around, got freedom. It's nice. Anyways, I'm going to record. I told the people upstairs that I'm recording because they were being super loud. Hopefully, they won't be super loud and I won't have to complain. Alright. Let's get started. Oh, so we're talking about like judging and stuff. Kind of interesting stuff. Oh, this is so good to be able to move around while I'm recording. This is the smartest thing ever. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is so good. Move around. It's like almost like I'm exercising. I think. Not that I would know. Alright, let's get started on enough. Kuf Talad Amud Beis. I think that's what exercise is. You move around, right? Alright. Kuf Talad Amud Beis. All the way at the bottom. Shnei Dayanim Gzeirus Hayu b'Yerushalayim. Oh, there were two, judges of decrees in Jerusalem. Admon v'Chonan ben Avishalom. Okay. Admon and Chonan ben Avishalom. Chonan omer Shnei Devarim. Admon omer Shiva. Chonan said two things that the rabbis disagreed with, and Admon said 7 of them. A fellow who's going, who travels someplace, and his wife now wants to be supported while he's away. Chonan omer says Chonan tishav basof lo tishav batchila. So Chonan says, look, if he dies and she goes to collect the Ksubis, so then she'll swear that she hasn't collected anything else from the estate. But to collect mizonis, she can just collect. She doesn't have to swear about anything, right? So again, so tishav basov, she swears at the end. Like if ultimately she'll end up collecting the ksuba, that's one thing she has to swear. But simply to collect the mizonis, that she doesn't need to swear about. But the sons of the high priests argue on this concept. I guess what Chanon is saying. Alright. When they said Tishav Batchila Uvasov, that she has to swear both for Mizonis as well as for her Ksube. Dose ben Arkinos. Dose ben Arkinos. Kidereim, like the sons of the high priests. Ben Yochanan ben Zakkai. Oh, it says Ben Yochanan ben Zakkai. Yofa Amar Chanon. Lo Tishav el Basov. That no, Chanon Taka says good that she only swears to collect the Ksube but not for the Mizonis. Standing is so cool. Very many, says the Gemara, we have a contradiction. Okay, fine. There were 3 judges of theft in Jerusalem. So meaning our Mishnah had said, so okay, whatever. We'll get to the misalignments in a minute. Admon ben Gadoy, v'Chonan HaMitzvi, v'Chonan ben Avishalom. Those 3 people. Kashet Tzlasa Train. So we have a question of 3. So contradiction number 1 is that our Mishnah says 2, and over here we list 3. Kash Gzeirus Agzelis, and the Mishnah says that they were judges of decrees, and over here we're saying they were judges of thefts. So is it 2? Is it 3? Is it thefts? Is it decrees? Friends, what do we do? Our heads are exploding. Bishlam Atlas Atrain Lokasha. Says the Gemara that, okay, I can understand why the 3 versus 2 thing is no problem. The Choshev Lekatani, the Choshev Lokatani is listing people who the author of the Brisa considered to be important. So, in the Mishnah, only Chonan and Avishalom were considered by the Tana of the Mishnah to be important. In the Brisa, the other one said also Chonan HaMitzvi was Oichit important. Elo. Gzeirus Agzelis Kasha, what do you do about the fact that one place says Dayana Gzeirus and one place says Dayana Gzelis? Amr Nachman by Yitzchak, she goes in Gzeirus al Gzelis. Ho. That the decrees that they would make were about theft. Kiditanya, as we learn in the Brisa. Kitmonetia. So if a ox gets into somebody's private property and uproots a plant, so Rabbi Yossi Omer goes a Gzeirus. So says Rabbi Yossi that those who would decree decrees in Jerusalem say Netia bas shnoso shtei kesef, that the fine for a a 1 year old sapling plant is 2 kesefs, 2 silver coins. And if it's 2 years old, so then it's 4 silver coins. V'ramini. Okay, fine. So we managed to figure out the discrepancies. Good. V'ramini. We have a kasha. There were 3 judges of decrees in Jerusalem. Admon, Vichonon, Vinachum. Who's Nachum? That's new. Amir Papa Mantana Nachum. Who's the one who mentioned Nachum? Reb Nosani. It's Reb Noson mentions Nachum. The Tana is, we're learning the Brisa. Reb Noson Omer says Reb Noson, Af Nachum Hamadi Migos Gzeir Sheb Yerushalayim Hoya. That Reb Noson says that Oichit Nachum Hamadi was of the decrees in Jerusalem. But the Chacham disagreed with Reb Noson. Suleka. That's it. Just 3. Ve'omer Reb Pinchas. Omer Boshaya. Shlosh meos v'tishim v'arba bati dinah b'Yerushalayim, that there were 394 courts in Jerusalem. Connectem bati knesios, also 394 synagogues. Uchnegdem bati midrashos, as well as study halls. Uchnegdem bati sofrim and cheters. Dayanin. So what do you mean only 3? There were 394 courts. So Dayan and Tuva, but yeah, there were plenty of judges. But those who would decree decrees, that's an under azach, that's something else. There were only 3 of them. Amavuna Mervasi, says Yehuda in the name of Ravasi, goes Yerushalayim, that those who would decree decrees in Jerusalem, they would receive for their payment 99 mana from the donations of the to the temple. Lo ratzu mosifin lohem, and if they were not satisfied with that amount, if that was too little for them, so then they would add more. Lo ratzu hatabrishia. What do you mean if it wasn't enough? What are they nudniks that were paying them, and they're saying no, it's not enough. I need more. El losafku. No, it means that if the 99 mana were not enough for them, who knows, maybe they had a big family, whatever it might be, if it wasn't enough for them to live off of, so then even if they don't want to accept more, we give them more anyways because they need it. Karna avashakal istira mizaka v'istira michayev v'doin dino v'doin lehu dino. So Karna, who remembers Karna? I think I remember Karna. Karna was Shmuel's chavrusa before Rav got there, I believe. There was a story in the Avkuf Ches of Masechta Shabbos, I think. I forgot the story, Lemaisa. But I think that was the story when Rav came. And did he die in that story? I have to look it up. But anyways, okay, so Karna, so if 2 people came before him for judgment, so he would receive 1 sela from each of them. So he'd receive essentially 2 sela, and he would preside over the case. How could he receive any money? But the pasuk says, "V'shochad lo sikach." You can't take a shochad. Wait, 1 second. What's the definition of shochad? Because we're going to mention patza soon. Excuse me, 1 second. Oh wait, I don't see the. Okay, I don't have the translation down here. Okay, but you can't take a bribe, I guess, essentially. So how could it be that Karna would accept any money from anybody? I mean, you can't, as a judge, you can't accept any kind of payment. So maybe you'll say, look, you can't accept anything from one of the litigants, because then you might sort of lean the case in that fellow's favor, right? If one of the litigants gives you money, gives the judge money, so then they may be inclined to rule in their favor. But since he's receiving equal payments from both of them, so he's not taking favors, they're still starting on equal footing. But so what? So what? Even if he accepts a seller from both of them, so they're both equal, does that make it okay? Don't take any payment. I assume it's a bribe, right? You can't take any bribe. What does it mean? If it means, well, you can't make the guilty person innocent and the innocent person guilty. Well, it already says that you can't tilt judgment. Obviously, you can't rule improperly. So why do we have to say that you can't accept a bribe if we already know that you're not allowed to judge improperly? So it means even if it's to, do business as usual, even if it's to make the innocent person innocent and the guilty person guilty, still you can't accept any kind of payment. So Amra Torah v'shochad lo sikach. So the Torah says that you can't accept any kind of payment, even if it's to keep things equal, and therefore you shouldn't be accepting any payment, even if it's from each of them, and sort of a balanced footing is maintained. So the Gemara says, well, that's only if he's accepting it as a bribe. But Karna b'Torah is agra avashakil. But Karna was a different story. He wasn't accepting it as a bribe. He was accepting it as payment. Meaning, he's working, and he's being paid for his work, and that's okay. But is it okay? Can a dayan, a judge, really accept payment for his work? We learn in the Mishnah, if a fellow accepts payment to judge, so then his judgment is irrelevant. It's null. It's annulled. So no, you can't accept payment for judgment. So how did Karna accept anything? So Hanamili Agar Dino. Karna Agar Betela Abashaka, who say, yeah, but you can't accept payment, a fee for judgment, but you can accept Schar Betela. What's Schar Betela? Schar Betela is he could be doing other things, right? Meaning right now he's sitting there and taking time to judge your case. He could be out betting his money in the stock market, and that's not a guarantee. Maybe you could be working at the local supermarket and getting paid hourly or something like that. So, but he's not there, and he's sitting here judging your case. So because he could be making money doing other things, and instead he's taking the time to do this for you, so you pay him for the fact that he's losing out on other sources of revenue by sitting here and judging your case for you. Is that okay? Are you allowed to accept schar betela, schar batola? That it's disgusting for a judge to accept money payment to judge. But at the end of the day, the judgment stands. Now what are we talking about? What kind of payment? Ilema agar dina agar what? Ilema agar dina. So if we say that we're talking about payment for judging, dino din, but then how could we be saying that the judgment stands, right? We said that if a fellow receives payment, so it's disgusting, but the judgment stands. But we learned in the Mishnah, that if a fellow receives payment for judging, his his judgment is irrelevant. So it must be that we're talking about schar batola, that he could be doing other things. And we're saying that it's still disgusting. So if it's disgusting, why would Karna do it? So hanimili betela de lo muchacho. That's schar batala that's questionable. That it's not obvious. Karna betela de muchacho haba. But Karna, it was clear. Why was it clear? Hava shakil. De hava toi ba'ambara de chamra v'yayvi lei zuza. Everybody, Karna apparently was a well-known wine connoisseur. That if you had barrels of wine and you needed to know, right there. Well, what's that? Who's that? There's that famous, I guess, relatively I don't know. There's that. Well, being that I'm trying to remember his name, maybe he's not that famous. But there's that Israeli wine critic, Rogov, I think, and he had these. I think he would put out these books every year or something with his ratings on different wines. And I think there was one thing would be drink up. If he was ready to drink now, it would be drink up. So people would kind of hire Karna to come and check his barrels and to check their barrels, and he would tell them okay, this you better drink now. It's not, if you wait too long, it's not going to be good anymore. This one still has time. So he was well known that was his job. That's what he did. And here he is sitting and judging this case. Clearly he could be inspecting barrels of wine and making money that way. but instead he's sitting here. So it's clear that, the payment that he's receiving is because he could otherwise be making money otherwise, so therefore we pay him for his time. But if it wasn't clear that this person would be making money otherwise, well then it would be disgusting. Like Ravuna, when a judgment would come, a case would come before Ravuna, Amarlo, he would say to them, Havuli gava dedali li b'charikoi, if you can find somebody for me to water my fields, ve'edun l'chudina, then sure, I will happily judge your case. But otherwise, I got work to do. So it's clear that there was that whatever payment would be, it would be schar batala. It would be because otherwise he's got other things that he could be doing. Amar Babo says, I think I don't exactly understand the logic here, but says Abbo, come and see how blind the eyes of those who receive bribes are. So if a fellow is having issues with his eyes, so he goes to see an eye doctor, he pays the eye doctor, and still, he doesn't know that the doctor will necessarily be able to heal his eyes, but nonetheless he pays him. But the people who receive bribes, they receive money, and blind their eyes. That those who receive bribes blind eyes. What does that mean? Alright, the whole point was that what, that the people who receive the shochad are blind? Okay. I don't know. Somehow they receive the money and then they become blind. Okay. How does that relate to the person who his eyes bother him, so he goes to the doctor and gives the guy money and maybe he'll get healed? And here they're giving these judges money, then the judges get blind? I don't know. I don't really get it, but okay. I guess accepting money for bribes and stuff is bad. The rabbis taught, so the bribe will blind the eyes of the wise. Certainly will blind the eyes of the foolhardy. And will, do stuff to the words of, mess up the words of the righteous. Certainly to the wicked. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand. Are foolhardy fellows and nudnik people judging cases? This is what it means. That bribes will blind the eyes of the rabbis, of the wise. Even if you have a very, very wise individual and he accepts a bribe, by the time he comes to die, mark my word, he will have a blind heart. Tzaddikim will mess up the words of the righteous. Even if you have a complete tzaddik, and he receives a bribe, he will not leave the world without a messed up intellect. Alright, fine, very nice. When Avdimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Omer, he said, Darash of Nachman Bar Koyin, the Nachman Bar Koyin Darshan. What does the pasuk mean? Melech b'mishpat yamid eretz v'ish trumas yarseno, that a king in justice will uphold the land, and a fellow of tithes will destroy it. Im domadayin the melech shenetzarich leklum. If a judge is like a king in that he doesn't need anything, he's got everything, he doesn't need money, he's a wealthy fellow, yamid eretz, well, that he will uphold the land. Im domen the kohen shemchazar lagronis. But if he's like a priest who has to go around to the different granaries asking people for trumah, yarsena, that is not a quality that you want in a judge who's needy. He will end up destroying the land because he may accept bribes and things like that. Rav Shila, says Rav Shila, Dayana deshoyel she'elta, a judge who borrows things, basically asks favors from people. Posule meidan dina, he can't judge because if he owes people things, then he may be inclined to rule in their favor. V'la'amar and ella teleslei le'oshule. That is only if now we only say this if it's a one-way street, right? But if it's a two-way street, right? If you have a judge who borrows things, but he also lends things, well then, but if he lends in return, so then that's okay. He's just a normal dude. Ini, is that true? Rava shel she'elta midvei barbarian afagav to lo shaile mine. But Rava would borrow things from Barbarian, who I think was like a the house of Barbarian, that they were like a wealthy, powerful family, and even though he would not lend them things in return, yeah, but that wasn't because he actually needed anything from them, that he was dependent on them. That was they were an honorable family, so he wanted to give them honor, so he borrowed things from them, but he wasn't actually dependent on them. Amar Rava says, Rava, my time with the shochado, how come what's the deal with shochad? Came to kabule shochado, because a fellow who accepts a bribe, mine, so he becomes closer to that person, legabe v'have kegufe, and they become like one body. Vein adam roye chayvel atzma, a person can't see guilt for himself. So my shochad shehuchad. What does shochad mean? It means that he is one, and therefore, right. So a fellow who accepts a bribe, he becomes one with the briber, and you can't, if you're the briber, so you're not going to make yourself guilty. A fellow should not preside over a case for a fellow who he loves, not for a fellow who he hates, because the fellow who he loves, he will be unable to find guilt. And the fellow who he hates, he will be unable to find merit. Amar Bai says, Rabbi, if you have a Torah scholar that's very popular in his town, it's not because he's particularly good or great or awesome. It's because he doesn't give them rebuke. If you rebuke them a little bit, they wouldn't love him so much. With regards to heavenly things. Amar Rava says, initially I thought that the people of Mechoza, where he lived, Kulu Rachmuli. Initially, it says Rava, I thought that all the people of Mechoza loved me. But once I became a judge, Amina, I figured, surely some of them hate me and some of them love me. But once I noticed that, look, the way it works is that, you judge honestly, and therefore you might have one person who's guilty one day, but the next day might be innocent in a different case, in a different matter. So therefore, kind of, at the end of the day, things kind of even out. So Amina Merachim Kulu Rachmuli Imesanu Kulu Sanuli. So therefore, being that sort of it's an even playing field, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. When you win, you're happy. When you lose, you're not. But it evens out. So therefore, rather, if people are don't like me, then it's probably an indication that nobody likes me. And if people like me, it's probably an indication that everybody likes me. Since it's not like any individual person should or shouldn't like him, since it's an even playing. Like maybe one time he judged in favor, but another time not, or vice versa. So that'll be even. But if there's sort of a general vibe of pro or con, that might be sort of an indication of general sentiment in the community. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, V'shochad lo sikach, do not receive a bribe. Neinu tzarich lomar shochad mamun. Certainly, you shouldn't receive money. Ela afilu shochad dvarim, but even things that are not financial, nami aser, those are not allowed. And we'll describe what those unfinancial things may be in momentarily. Midlo ksiv botza lo sikich. It doesn't say don't receive botza. I guess botza would be specifically financial, but it says shochad. And shochad could be financial, but it can also be any other kind of favor. Heichidami, well, shochad dvarim. What would be considered a bribe that is not financial? Kiyad Shmuel, it's like Shmuel. Have over b'mabara. He was crossing over a bridge. Also ugava. All of a sudden, a certain fellow shows up, and Yoav le yode, and he gives him a hand. Amalei ma'avidtich. Shmuel's like, yo, what's up, brother? Why are you giving me a hand? Amalei, oh, dina isli. He say, oh yeah, because I have to go to court, so I kind of want to help you out, and it would be good for me. He says, look, well, I can no longer judge you because you just bribed me by doing me a favor. Very interesting. It's very interesting. I was once at a friend's house, and his father is a real estate developer in New York City, and he was I don't know, maybe I shouldn't get into this. Anyways, it was interesting how, you can't pay people bribes, but there are other things you can do if you need to get, I'm not going to go there. So he says, he says, look, I can't. So it's interesting, right? So we're saying, it's not just the financial things that are not allowed, but also, sort of other kind of things that you might do to help them out. So that wouldn't be allowed either. So a Maimer was sitting and he was judging. And then a leaf, a feather landed on his head. Also, so a certain fellow came and removed it. And a man was like, yo, why are you removing a feather from my head? Dina Isli. And the guy's like, oh, well, I have a case soon and I want you to help me out. Well, he doesn't say it, but I have a case coming up. So Maimer says, well, I can't be your judge then because you just did me a favor. My ukva, there was, I guess, spit in front of him. Also, so a certain fellow came and he covered it up. So Mark was like, yo, why are you covering up the spit? Dina Isli. So the guy says, well, I have a case coming up. So he says, well, I cannot be your judge. Rabbi Shmuel Yossi had a sharecropper who every Friday would bring him fruits. Yom Echad, one day, one time he brought the fruits on Thursday as opposed to Friday. So Yishmael Bar Yossi is like, yo, why are you bringing it on a Thursday this week? You usually bring it on a Friday, brother. So Amalei Dina Isli, he's like, well, I have a case coming up. Vaminus, I figured Agav Orchi, I may as well drop off these fruits. I may as well drop off these fruits. Lo kabel mine. So Bishma Bar Yossi didn't accept it. He says, look, I can't be your judge because you just attempted to bribe me. Osiv Zuza der Abonon. So he, asked these other rabbis if they could preside over the case. V'kadainin lay, and they judged the case for the sharecropper. Now, after that incident, Omar, right, as Bishma Bar Yossi was kind of walking to and fro, Omar, he was saying to himself, right, he was thinking, maybe we can make this argument, can make that argument, all of a sudden he was, meaning, he didn't even accept the bribe and he's not even judging the case, but still all he could think about is, what are the kinds of arguments that the sharecropper could be making, right, that would be favorable for him. He's like, gosh, it's, may their spirits be swelled, those who accept bribes, meaning he's saying like, it's a really bad thing to accept a bribe. In my case, Shalom Natalti, I didn't actually accept the bribe. And if I would have accepted the bribe, Shalom Natalti, I would be accepting my own stuff. It's my own fruits that the guy's dropping off. And yet, still, all I could think about is how this case could work in the favor of the sharecropper. Imagine if I was a judge and I accepted a bribe. Certainly, it would be extremely difficult to rule against the briber. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha, I see lay ahu gaber reishis agez. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha, a certain fellow dropped off reishis agez, that when you shear your sheep every year, so you give 1/60th of it to the kohen. So this random person shows up with reishis agez. Amalei meichat. He says, where are you from? Amalei midoch plan, from such and such a place. I don't understand. From that place to here, you couldn't find the coin that you had to schlep all the way over here to give me reishis agez. Amalei dina isli. He says, well, look, I have a case, a court case coming up. And I figured, I may as well drop off reishis agez with you, limar. Says, look, I can no longer be your judge. And he did not accept the shearings. And he asked the different some other rabbis to judge the case for him. And yet, even though he did not accept, right, even though he was a kohen and he was entitled to reishis agez, and he didn't even accept it, and he's not even judging the case, nonetheless, all he could think about is Omar Ibai Ta'anachi, Ibai Ta'anachi. He can make, right, this fellow could make this argument in his favor, that argument that would help him. Hachi, right, so Omar, he says, Tepach Nafshim Shemakabli Shochad, he says it's really terrible to accept bribes. Uma'ani, that me, Shilonatati, I didn't accept these shearings. Vimnatati Shilinatati, and if I would have accepted them, I would be entitled to them because it's Reishis Agez and I'm a Kohen. Kach, and yet I can't get it out of my head. All I could think about is how to rule in this fellow's favor, how to make it work in this fellow's favor. Certainly then people who actually accept bribes and then go ahead and judge the case, I mean, it would be extremely difficult for them to rule against the briber. Rav Onon, Rav Onon, a fellow dropped off the small fish. Rav Onon's like, yo, bro, why are you dropping off small fish? Dina Isli. So he says, well, I have a court case coming up. Rav Onon did not accept the small fish. He says, I cannot judge you. Dina Demar lo ba'ina. So the fellow says, look, I don't need you to judge me. But just accept my small fish, so as not to hold me back from offering first fruits. The Tanya is we learn in the Brisa, a fellow came from Baal Shalisha, and he brought for Elisha lechem bikurim esrim, 20 loaves of bread from first wheat, lechem saorim, and lechem bikurim, esrim lechem saorim, 20 barley loaves, v'chamu b'tziklono, and also caramel. Elisha ochel bikurim ava. Would Elisha eat bikurim? Ella lo melcha, but rather to say to you, kol amevi doron l'talmid chacham. Somebody brings a gift to a Torah scholar, ki'ilu makav bikurim. It's as though he is offering bikurim. So therefore, this fellow says to Rav Onon, he says, look, I don't need you to judge me, but please just accept my small fish, because it'll be as if I am offering bikurim, first fruits, since you are a Torah scholar and you will accept my gift. Omar le kabul lo ba'inon. So Rav Onon says, look, I wasn't going to accept this gift, but the ikbil hashto the Omar li taima makbilna. Look, now that you've explained, now that you've kind of framed it that way, that you want to give a gift to a Talmid Chacham, so it's like you bring bikurim, Seder, I'll accept it. Shadri l'kamid Rav Nachman. So Rav Onon referred this fellow to Rav Nachman. Shalachle nidani mar lahagavra, and Rav Onon sent to Rav Nachman, can you please judge this fellow? Da'ana onon pasunu le'ledina, because I'm unfit to judge this fellow. Omar mideshalachli hachi. So Rav Nachman says, oh wow, Rav Onon is sending me this letter. Shema mina kreve hu. So it must be that he is a relative of this fellow, or maybe he's close to this fellow. He's a relative of this fellow. And therefore, for that reason, he's unable to judge this fellow. Now, on the the docket or something, Rav Nachman was meant to be judging a case for orphans. So Omar Hai Essay by Essay, he says, look, this is an essay of judging, a mitzvah's essay of judging, as Rashi says, Ushvat and Tzedek. And there's also, I think it would mean that there's also the essay of Kavod Torah, right? If this fellow is coming through the referral of Rav Onon, so Rav Nachman figured, okay, it's also the honor of the Torah to give this case precedence. So essay the Kavod Torah Adif. So let's prioritize the mitzvah's essay of honoring the Torah. So Salka Ledina Diasmi Va'achte Ledine. So he prioritized this case that came through Rav Onon from this fellow with the small fish, and he prioritized that over the case of the orphans. And then when the other litigant saw the honor, the favor that Rav Nachman was showing to this fellow, that he prioritized this case on behalf of this fellow, so he started tainoso. So then the fellow litigant was unable to talk and unable to make his remarks because he was so overwhelmed by the fact that he seemed like he was up against a favored fellow. So Rav Onon, what the heck is that? Rav Onon havarogel Eliyahu the Osi Gabe. So now Eliyahu Navi would often visit Rav Onon. The Havamasni le Seder Eliyahu, because he would learn what's referred to the Tanat Eliyahu. Okay. But after this, once this situation happened, Istalik Eliyahu stopped coming to Rav Anan. Yosef b'Tainisa uvarachme. So Rav Anan fasted and he prayed. And Eliyahu came back. But But this time when he came back, Rav Anan was very scared. Mevaisle ba'usi. He was very afraid of Eliyahu Hanavi. V'avet tevusa v'Yosef kame. And he made some kind of a box, and he would, I guess, sit in this box while they would learn. Until they finished learning all, I guess, of this Tana of Eliyahu. Seder Eliyahu Zuta. And that Seder Eliyahu Rabba was when he was learning prior to this incident, when he would learn outside of the box. And then the Seder Eliyahu Zuta was when he was learning after this incident, when he would be sitting in this kind of box when they would study together. Now, during the days of Rav Yosef, the Eibishter was upset with the people, and there was a famine. So the rabbi said to Rav Yosef, why don't you pray for us? So Rav Yosef says, Elisha, when it came to Elisha the prophet, that when the rabbis would leave Elisha, Umoson Rabbanon, there would be, after the rabbis would leave, there would still be 2,200 people who were dependent on Elisha for sustenance. Wow. Even so, when the Eibishter was upset, he didn't take it upon himself to pray for them. I guess if the Eibishter was upset, he didn't want to interfere. What will I pray? How do we know that? Meaning, I guess Rav Yosef was saying, if the Eibishter is upset, I'm not going to interfere, I guess. Interesting. How do we know that there were 2,200 people dependent on Elisha? The Pasuk says, that Elisha's servant said to him, how will I give this to 100 people? So now in that Pasuk, it mentioned like 20 loaves of barley and another loaf and Carmel. So there were like 22 items that were brought to him, and it says that there were 100 people dartin. So what does it mean that there were 100 people dartin? If it means that he's going to give these 22 items to each of the 100 people, well, b'shnei batzoros tuvabu. If it was during a time of famine, that would be quite an excess to be giving each person. If it's time of famine, there isn't really an opportunity to be giving people such large portions. No, it means that each item went before 100 people, i.e. 100 times 22, right? So each item would go, was put before 100 people. So the first item went before 100 people, second item went between another 100 people, so it's 22 times 100, which is 2200. When the rabbis would leave Rav, the Beis HaMedrash of Rav, Alpha Umoson Rabbanon, there would be 1,200 rabbis remaining, I guess, dependent on Rav, I guess. Mibei Rav Huna, when they would leave Rav Huna, Havupaishe Tamnemea Rabbanon, there would be 800 rabbis left, people left. Rav Huna Havadorj Betleiser Amoroi. Now, when Rav Huna would give a shir, there would be 13 people kind of like being human microphones, disseminating what he was saying to the people who were gathered there, in like 13 different directions and groups. When the people would get up from the yeshiva of Rav Huna, and they would, kind of like pat the dust off of their clothing. So there would be so much dust from all the people studying by Rav Huna that when they would dust off their clothing after learning, all of the dust would like clog up the sky with dust. They would say in Eretz Yisrael, that they must be getting up from the yeshiva by Rav Huna in Bavel. That's why there is all this dust. I was actually reading a book recently, and there's an interesting solution, I guess, for global warming. It's kind of risky, but I think it's kind of a last resort kind of thing. But to kind of like almost like cool down the sky by basically blocking the sun, essentially, with like these particles and stuff that would basically just make the world not as hot. It's kind of a risky solution. I think it's probably a last resort thing, but it's interesting that they would get up from the yeshiva, they would dust off their clothes, and it would kind of block the sky so much that even in Eretz Yisrael they would notice it. Maybe there's a solution for global warming. Maybe that's how they used to deal with it. They would study Torah. They would study Torah, get up, dust off their clothing, cool down the world. Okay. Ki mifter Rabbanu Bey Rabba ve Rav Yosef. When the rabbis would get up from the Beis HaMedrash of Rabba and Rav Yosef, Abu Paishe, Arba Meir Rabbanan, there would be 400 rabbis left over. V'karu l'nafshayu Yasmir. They would call themselves orphans. That there were so few students left. You know, by Rafuna there were 800. By Rab there were 1,200. Ki Abu Mifter Rabbanu mi Bei Abaye. When the rabbis would leave the Beis HaMedrash of Abaye, v'amila mi Bei Rav Papa, some say from the Beis HaMedrash of Rav Papa, v'amila mi Bei Rav Ashi, some say from the Beis HaMedrash of Rav Ashi, Havu Paishe, Mosin Rabbanan, there would be 200 rabbis left, V'kar Nafshari Yasme Diasme, and that was half the amount of Rabbi and Rav Yosef. Rabbi and Rav Yosef called themselves the orphans. Now there were 200, only 200, they would call themselves the orphans of the orphans. Friends, that was Daf Kufei of Masechta Ksubis. Super interesting daf. We talked about, where we start the last parak of Masechta Ksubis, talk about these dayanim and all these different conditions when judging. So super interesting stuff. I hope you all enjoyed. Peace out.